Ladies and gentlemen, many thanks for having me, Julia. Welcome to the panel discussion on rights and responsibilities in online child safety. I'm delighted to share today's discussion with you, and I'm inviting with me on stage the Minister of Digital Affairs in Poland, Mr. Marek Zagórski. Please come upstairs. Next up, we have Ms. Elisabeth Secker from the Commission for the Protection of Minors and Human Dignity in Germany. Then we have Professor Mirosław Filiciak from the SWPS University in Warsaw, Simon Grehan from Webwise, the Irish Safer Internet Center. Tomasz Łukawski is the head of the Mały Powstaniec 3rd Elementary School. And last but not least, we have Szymon Wójcik from the Empowering Children Foundation as part of the Polish Safer Internet Center. I'm inviting all panelists to join me upstairs, please. Okay, with having such a diverse panel, I think we immediately dive into the content, and I think we all agree the internet is amazing and opens up a whole world of exciting possibilities. Children and young people are going online to play, learn, create, and connect. Nevertheless, with the digital world changing all the time, how can we make sure our children are staying safe online? What are our roles and our responsibilities? This is a very difficult question. We are trying to find some solutions for to say. I know that's very easy to say. With children going online at a very early age on, habits and ways of being online have repeatedly changed in the past years. We are talking from consumers to creators, about professions such as a YouTuber, a blogger, an influencer on Instagram. We all agree that staying safe online now goes way beyond just computer security issues and more into the direction of psychological safety. We are talking now about challenges such as cyberbullying, hate speech, fake news, just to name a few. Now to hear from our panelist, Simon, the Empowering Children Foundation is also the Polish helpline. By being, so to say, on the field and based on the calls you're receiving, with which topics are you currently dealing and what is currently trending in Poland?
Dyskusja nasza jest dwujęzyczna, więc...
Well, our conference is bilingual, so I will speak Polish. Well, yeah, our foundation, Empowering the Children, has two helplines, 116 111 for children and young people, and 8100 100 for teachers and parents about children's security. Well, we hear about different problems in the calls, but we specialize in the online problems. And one must say that looking at the statistics, cyber violence is problem number one. That is why every year at this conference we spend a lot of time to discuss this issue. We had a great lecture by Professor Brzeski today, and there's going to be a whole separate session devoted to the topic. It's definitely a topic that is important at schools.
Simon, we also, to hear also from other EU countries, we have Ms. Secker here with us. Maybe you can give us an update on the state of play in Germany.
So first of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm very excited to join this conference. The KJM is the German regulator which focuses on removing illegal content on the internet. And of course, as Simon before said in his speech, for us is still a big issue also pornography in the internet. And we contact content providers to remove or to change the content. And for example, in Germany also a big issue of this year was hate speech. So we are still focusing on these topics.
Thank you very much. I think from these first two answers, we can already see that the online world has clearly no borders and that we are more or less dealing with the same topics. We heard from Simon before, who is working for Webwise, is the Irish Awareness Center, and you're producing a variety of resources and materials for different target groups, children, young people, parents, and also teachers, and many more. How do you keep track on all these responsibilities in this fast-spinning online world?
Thanks, Sabrina. Well, our focus mainly is on working with schools and building capacity within the education sector in Ireland to address internet safety through teaching and learning in schools. We do this really by a couple of means, primarily by developing curriculum resources for teachers to use in classrooms. We feel like schools are the best place to deal with all children, regardless of their social background, home situations, or anything like that. So we think it's the best opportunity to reach all children on these matters. And our focus is really on supporting schools to do this as effectively as possible. All good education programs, as was mentioned earlier, will involve parents as key actors in them. And actually schools are one of the most successful ways in Ireland of reaching parents with key messages around children's safety. For us, the key issues at the moment, or the biggest issues that schools are contacting us about, relate to the sharing of self-generated intimate images, sexting images, or what the kids in Ireland call nudes. So it's a difficult situation because these images are potentially illegal because it's children under the age of 16 involved. It's a criminal act to create, possess, or share these images. So it's very difficult for schools, especially for school management, to deal with incidents. So they need advice on how to respond appropriately to incidents, and also they need support to raise awareness and prevent this activity through work in the classrooms, curriculum level.
Thank you very much, Simon. I think you said the key words already, which was school, education, teachers, and parents. So to put some theory into practice now, I'm excited to hear from Mr. Tomasz Łukawski, who is the head of a school that has been awarded 3 years in a row as Microsoft Showcase School in Digital Transformation. That sounds very impressive. Tomasz, perhaps you can share some best practices with us and some key to success stories. How are you dealing with the responsibilities?
Dzień dobry.
Good afternoon. I feel honored that I can speak at this forum. I'd like to share some thoughts as the head teacher of the school, as a pedagogue, but also as a parent. In terms of security online, as the head teacher, I'm completely responsible for the content used at every device at the school. That is what the Polish legislation says, the law on the educational system and the educational law that got enforced this year. I feel responsible, and that is why we secure the internet with the use of filters, UTM filters. So even smartphones can be secured remotely because everything is in the cloud. So, for example, I can choose a hate speech filter or block pornographic site. I can limit transfer speed for community portals, social portals. But, well, as a pedagogue, I'm not quite convinced that such prohibitions and orders are the right methods and the right means for students in the longer run to understand this is not allowed. I think we should put an emphasis on prevention and on building an inner morality among students, so that once they have access to open internet, they will know they should not enter some websites and should not do some things. We need to shape ethical behavior, and that is the mainstream, that is the main line that should guide teachers, in my opinion. Now, the question was completely different. I understand I have shared my reflections after listening to all the wonderful presentations, but, well, when we got all the certificates and awards, well, I don't really think we are a model school. If you came to visit us, it would turn out that many lessons are exactly the same as in your schools. But what we emphasized was eliminating the barriers among teachers, changing teacher mentality towards technologies. We are not using technologies for the sake of technologies, but they should also support education and be in the background of the educational process. It should support the colloquial knowledge of students. New information needs to be absorbed in a process. The key thing is the process and not the knowledge. So we are not really It's okay. We do not present knowledge, but through interdisciplinary processes with the ICT in the background, we try to make children act, and gain knowledge in this way. Technology should be absent, truly speaking, absent and at the same time omnipresent. I don't know if you understand me. It should be omnipresent to such an extent that we don't pay any attention to it, and the educational goal should be something of key importance.
Much, Thomas. I think mentality, that's also another key word. I'm pretty sure the audience is very keen to hear more from you. So guys, if you have any questions for Thomas, please make sure to find him in one of the coffee breaks. Sorry for this advertisement. And last but not least, we have Mirosław Filiciak with us. You're coming from the research field, and perhaps you can already give us, so to say, a forecast about things that we should expect in the future, any responsibilities we should be aware of sooner rather than later.
Okay, so hello and thank you for having me here. And yeah, as the research guy, I'm probably the one who will talk like it's very complicated, and it will be more and more complicated soon, because I think there are many new issues on the agenda. And for example, you mentioned the problem of fake news, filter bubbles. It's something which is, you know, I think the strong threat to democracy. And of course, it's not only the problem of children's safety, but it's something which should be the important part of media education. At the same time, now in the context of talking about more and more complex perspective, I think the problem is the word ethics were mentioned here, and the problem is that political situations show us in very clear way that we don't share the same ethics as the societies. We don't share the same values. So the problem is how to respect the people's own values. For example, different balance between control and trust, to be not too patronizing, and at the same time, you know, to resolve this problem. So I think it's, yeah, we have a lot of work to do.
Okay, thank you very much. I think this first round of comments already showed pretty well how important a multi-stakeholder approach is when dealing with child online safety. Multi-stakeholder approach that's currently very much used, sounds very fashionable, and it's something very obvious we should do. But what is actually needed to make a multi-stakeholder approach work efficient? Maybe let's first hear from Thomas. Working in a school as a teacher, headmaster, providing education to young people, what are you expecting from the various stakeholders in the public and in the private sector?
It's a good question. I will probably not be very popular saying this, but I expect them to give us some more freedom. I used to want to found an association, Keep Away from Education, Don't Interfere with Education. I think that round of applause will not really help me too much after I've said that. But, well, we shouldn't be disturbed. I think we should trust people. I don't know if we have any people from Finland here, but in Finland, more than 20 or 30 years ago, politicians agreed that they would not interfere with what teachers do. And every change should be good for the child. And it's not always the case. Political topics should be dealt with outside schools, and I think this is my main message here. I don't know if I answered your question.
Of course, thank you very much. Maybe we go to Professor Filiciak. You are also coming from the education field, higher education in that case. Anything you would like to add or echo?
Okay, so my answer probably will be a little bit simplistic, but of course this multi-stakeholder approach is the only possible approach, because education doesn't, finish at the doors of the school, and I think that new networked media make the borders between education, non-education, and other aspects of our life more and more blurry. But it's it's something which is very obvious and it's easy to say. But this cooperation, it's of course very, very problematic. We have political issues. We have, as I already said, these different values problems. So different actors of this field, which is everyday life of every one of us. There are conflicts, but I think that the role of the school and public institutions is to be kind of moderators between those spheres. And yeah, as I already said, it's a little bit simplistic, but it's probably the only one answer I have.
Thank you very much. Going to a mediator, and I'm going to Szymon from the Polish Safer Internet Center. You're working with the different stakeholders in the public and in the private sector. How important is this collaboration for your work on a daily basis or in general?
Tak, faktycznie dla nas
Yes, indeed. In our Empowering Children Foundation and in the Polish Office of Safer Internet program, it's all about collaboration between the stakeholders for the sake of safety of children. I think mediation is a very good word in this context. NGOs like ours should serve as mediators for those different worlds. Such a conference like this one clearly shows how many actors are involved in the field. We cooperate with public institutions and with private organizations dealing with internet, with Google, with Facebook, quite importantly. And we try to combine various backgrounds and experience and reach you, teachers and education professionals, with all the information. We want to spread information among partners from various sectors, whether it be public, private, or civic society, and the other way around. We should also spread information among various countries. This is an international conference, and this is no coincidence. The problem area is of international nature too. Without cooperation, international cooperation and learning from other countries' experience, there's no talking about solving problems.
Thank you very much, Szymon. And talking about international collaboration, we also have Simon from the Irish Safer Internet Center with us. Maybe you have similar experience in Ireland, also collaborating with public and private institutions.
Yeah, we're lucky in Ireland, or I don't know, we have a unique situation in Ireland where a lot of the big social media companies are actually based in Ireland. So we find perhaps maybe easier to collaborate with these entities than elsewhere. what observation I kind of make, I kind of agree. So rather than repeat what everyone has said already, like we all know what good multi-stakeholder cooperation looks like, and we all know what bad multi-stakeholder lack of cooperation looks like. And the bad looks like this. It's like industry says it's parents' responsibility, parents say it's schools' responsibility, and the schools say it's industry and governments and everyone. So everyone, and we have an expression in Irish, I won't say it, but the English translation is, something that is everyone's responsibility is nobody's, you know? And I think that's the potential downside of multi-stakeholder approach, is that nobody takes their own responsibility. And the reality is everyone has a responsibility, and their responsibilities are best done in cooperation with others. I still come back to what I said initially. I think there are, it's a kind of ideal utopian view that everyone's parents will engage with their children, that all companies will behave responsibly. I think schools are best placed to have the biggest impact on all children, and unfortunately that's the same with all issues. So schools get burdened with everything. So it's the school's role to make sure children eat healthily, use the internet effectively. And so what is lacking there is obviously there's a capacity issue in schools and a resource issue in schools. And I think in the multi-stakeholder approach, we really need to assess, you know, where is the most effective, what institutions are the most effective to make the biggest impact, and particularly the biggest impact on the most vulnerable children, and then how do they get the resources to do this effectively?
Thank you very much, Simon. Going on to another European country, Ms. Secker, maybe you would like to echo something and also highlight the approach that's followed in Germany in this regard.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree that really all organizations which are working on the field of protection of minors have to work together to achieve good results. And for example, we have made the experience that it's also very important to work with industries. And in Germany, we established, therefore, a system called a self-regulation system, regulated self-regulation. And that means that companies can join a self-regulation institution and get advice how to keep up the legal provisions on the protection of minors. And that helps us very much, because it's not possible for the media authorities in Germany to supervise every content uploaded every minute and so on. So the self-regulation institutions look at content in advance and evaluate and give them also an age rating, and that's really quite practical.
Okay, thank you very much. Finally now, to look into the future, the famous what's next question. We all know new technologies are arriving. The Internet of Things is growing rapidly. We have heard that this morning already. Virtual reality is becoming more and more popular. The iPhone X is on its way. So with all these new innovations coming up, what advice can you guys give to our audience today? And how can we continue to support teachers and to support the schools as a whole ecosystem, the parents, and also the children in the digital age? Maybe ladies first.
Yeah, good question. I mean, we have to take into account that there are so many new distribution channels which are really challenging, and my advice is to keep interested in what children are doing on the internet, like keeping interested in what they are doing on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook. And I think the main responsibility for the public regulators is to focus also on new topics and try to implement new strategies. For example, we have also implemented some kind of technical measures that are just in additional or seen additionally to other measures, like also awareness and so on, but they can help, for example, to that children are not getting confronted with illegal content, for example. So that's maybe also an approach.
Any topics on your list for the next month, year you're focusing on?
We are now focusing also on advertising that is given on YouTube, for example, and attracts children. For example, like Bibi's Beauty Place. I don't know if you know that. That's like a promoting products on YouTube. So that's actually the kind of topic we are focusing on.
Thank you very much, Simon.
Tak, no tutaj także przygotowując tą konferencję zawsze się mierzymy trochę z tym tematem.
While preparing the conference, we are always thinking about possible diagnoses and things that would happen to technology in the next future. On the other hand, however, we know that the already existing threats are still very valid. Simon Grehan, in his presentation, said that maybe too often we are interested in novelties because they are so attractive and so interesting, and maybe too rarely we seek solutions for the already existing problems. Because, let's admit it, the majority of the already existing problems still go unsolved. And it takes a lot of work to solve them in all areas. This is what we are trying to do. We are trying to keep a healthy balance between tackling issues like cyberbullying or pornography and working with things that in the next future might become of bigger importance, like virtual reality, Internet of Toys, and some hot topics nowadays, like fake news. All these will be covered during parallel sessions later on in the conference. Also, Ken Koresh already mentioned that. He mentioned that we should take a broader perspective and encourage the creative use of the Internet's potential as a form of prevention. In the next session, we'll hear from my colleague from the foundation, Łukasz about it. Based on Professor Pyżalski's research, we know that already 15 or 16% of teenagers post their creative work online. And show their creativity online. And I think it's also up to us to create a good opportunity for them to be creative online. So there are many topics to cover at this point, old and new, and I think that's it for now.
A follow-up question. The Polish Safer Internet Center, you also do a lot of awareness raising and you go into schools, so you work with the teachers and you work with the parents. Is there any question you always receive when you go into schools and you do some training, some major concerns?
No, tych pytań, wątpliwości jest bardzo dużo.
Well, there are many questions and concerns. Our experiences show that teachers and educators in general are very interested in the topic. Following what Director Łukawski said, and what Simon Grehan mentioned too, schools have too many tasks also in the area of prevention. and it's a too big burden for them. If you give them too much of a burden, they might get defensive. They might react like, well, let us do things our way, and let's do the things we want, not everything at once. I think it's essential to come up with a certain offer to them, something that's attractive enough that head teachers and teachers will want to use it. And this is our philosophy too. We want to create the best possible material, and we want to share the material with schools, and we want to make it attractive enough for you to use it out of your own will, not because somebody makes you do it.
To Simon, I believe you experience the same in Ireland. You're working in the same field. Any advice you are giving to teachers in today's digital age?
The biggest challenge for schools and teachers in Ireland really is, and maybe before I say what it is, I'll just explain the context. So we've come from a situation where ICT and particularly internet technologies were integrated in schools by schools and teachers that were very enthusiastic about it, to in the last 5 years we've seen more mainstream integration, lots of schools now using tablets and Chromebooks and children's own devices in the classroom and at home to facilitate their learning. And what we have actually, and there's been some investment by government in infrastructure, and what we've seen after initial enthusiasm is that there's now beginning to be some pushback by parents who are concerned that this isn't really as good as we thought it was going to be. And there's recently a survey of parents about the advantage of use of ICT or internet technologies in education. And the single biggest benefit, according to parents, of using ICT was that their school bags of their children were lighter than before. This is the biggest challenge for us going forward, because there's huge potential for children to support their learning, to lead their own learning and to develop skills to learn throughout their whole lives using the technologies that we give them. But there are increasing fears, and particularly I think with parents it's around distraction. So they're worried that their children are looking at Facebook instead of studying or everything like this. And I think this is our issue now, is to clearly show to the mainstream of parents who are not enthusiastic adopters that there's a clear educational benefit to using internet technologies at home and in the classroom. And how we do that is really changing the methodologies that we use to teach in some aspects, and also teaching or helping children to get the educational benefits from the internet, and not assuming that they just come by switching on the machine and connecting to the internet. So that's our biggest challenge, I think, at the moment.
Thank you very much. Looking into the next month, next year, what's the topic of focus in your awareness-raising work in Ireland?
Our immediate concern is around research skills, I guess. So it would be identifying reliable sources of information and using them to support particular curricular areas that require students to search primary sources online.
Okay, thank you very much. Going on to Thomas, and you already shared some best practices with us, and your school is obviously doing very well. Any concerns you are receiving from parents, or also some advice you can give to our teachers in the audience today?
Tak, rodzice mają mnóstwo obaw.
Oh yes, parents raise a lot of concerns, but following what you said, what we need is a new teaching teaching curriculum and a new teaching modes when it comes to using technology at school, because parents are not really convinced that technology, ICT is good at school, and I think it is. Barnes in 1975 wrote a book on how to teach. Back then, it wasn't possible. Douglas Barnes mentioned certain communication skills. I think social media and kids' comments on social media are a type of explorative speech referred to by Barnes. He argues that speech can guide your thinking, and I think it is the basic message for us. While understanding technology, we have to know how to get the message across to kids. So we have to teach them thinking, and we have to teach them creativity. Herbert Koch recently wrote a book about this think box, this pen drive you have in your head. And it turns out that Kayen's neurodidactics theory, to the best of my memory, has been mocked in the States for 100 years. And the book I'm referring to was written in 2013. And now scientists claim that our thinking process affects in the glia cells. And that there's a certain impulse received by kids evoking the calcium ion wave and boosting creativity, boosting innovation. I think schools have a problem in that we are suppressing creativity in kids, giving them Fs for the errors, because we don't want them to make errors, to make mistakes. But creativity and innovation is about erring and making mistakes until you create a new value, which can be replicated after some time. This is the story of innovation. So how do we teach creative thinking if we don't let kids make mistakes, giving them Fs for mistakes, and creating a classroom culture where the teacher teacher can do more than a student? Or when we run a discussion with kids, but the only answer we expect is the answer we have in our heads. This is destroying creativity too. We have to be aware that a teacher should be a guide, should step aside and allow for explorative speech of kids. And then the kids should make their own thesis and argue for the thesis all by themselves. I don't know whether I have enough time, but I missed a very important thing. When I spoke about politicians previously, I have to admit that NGOs did a lot of good things in Poland. For instance, the thing that coding is within our curriculum as of the beginning of this year. Szymon and Ewa Krupa's organization is a part of the agreement on digital society in Poland, and they influenced the government bodies a lot, and they did a lot of good things. We've got coding in our skill curriculum. In the preamble to our school curriculum, we've got interdisciplinary approach, which is quite unprecedented. Also, we argue that schools should be innovative. We don't have to apply for innovation within the education office. Schools have to be creative, and that's it. So there are a lot of new good things coming. Besides, there's a draft on nationwide education network. Minister Zagórski is not here, but he knows that as of September 2018, all schools in Poland will be connected to fast broadband internet, which will be secured with content filtration, and it will go with some prevention and education layer. I think it's an unprecedented venture globally. I do not know of any other countries doing such things. Based on the fiber optic networks already existing and new ones in Poland, all schools in Poland will have fast internet, which will be well secured.
Thank you very much. Maybe as a follow-up question, we hear there are a lot of things going on in terms of the curriculum. You mentioned boosting creativity, coding. How about the professional development of the teachers? Is there maybe, again, a best practice from your school? How do you make sure the teachers are trained and equipped for all these technologies arriving in the school?
Yes, I allowed NGOs to act in our school, NGOs that provide know-how. And despite my competencies as the head teacher, because, well, I am an IT teacher and a music teacher, not only that, but the head teacher does not have the opportunity to attend every lesson. I think that allowing as many training sessions to take place in the school, open lessons for other teachers to visit, allowing the teachers to complete postgraduate courses not related to the policy of the pursued by the head teacher, well, results in a complete change, or sometimes a change of my policy as the head teacher. Sometimes it turns out, for example, that the classes from 1 to 3 should learn coding. So at first I thought that the older class IT teacher would be responsible for that. But since it turned out that our teachers were so passionate about coding, we allowed the kindergarten to come to the school. So every teacher received one kindergarten group to teach them programming. NGOs helped us with their trainers and know-hows, and now the youngest classes teachers, although they don't have the postgraduate studies or courses, they have managed to do a lot. They have contributed with lots of curricular innovations. We program robots. We've got School2Go blogs. We've got Internet of Things coding lessons. We've got 28 groups from grades 1 to 3, and I'm positively surprised with what's happening in my school. There are 1,300 students in my school and 140 teachers. It's not a small school, it's a big one. And it seems to us that, well, we are passionate about teachers, and the hiatus I mentioned at the very beginning, well, we're trying to fill it up by acting. When we don't know how to act, we are always guided by the good of the child. So talking to the parents, to the local governments, to the supervisory bodies. Sometimes, even though we might not like a draft law that is being discussed, we always proceed on the assumption that the good of the child is always the key value. Have I answered your question?
Thank you very much. Again, that sounds very impressive. So again, I'm advertising you for the teachers who would like to hear more about the developments you're implementing in your school. Last but not least, Professor Filiciak, I've already asked you about the what's next question, but what advice can you give to our audience?
As I already said, I like to think about digital technologies as the not separate field of our existence, but rather another dimension. Because everything, we do, almost everything we do, even most intimate things are mediated via digital technologies. So when we are talking about media education, we are talking about education. It's simple for me. And when we are talking about education, it's the problem. What is the society we prepare young people for? And it's a fundamental one, because we have the problems with social inequalities. In Polish context, it's probably the question of Poland's future, our economical environment, how, as I know, in some we are not the core, you know, most modern country in Europe. We are a semi-peripheral country in many aspects. So there is, you know, the big question about Poland's or every country's development vision, and we should, you know, I'm sure that school is the very basis of this vision, because the teachers have, you know, the keys for the future. And for example, in Poland we have this problem, you know, we should empower teacher, because I think that there are some limits to this free market approach. As even as a father of kids in primary school, I see how many parents consider, you know, they think of school as kind of another shop. You know, they are clients, and you know, they think of teacher as kind of sellers, and it's something that is a little bit disgusting for me. We should, you know, build this relation with school, basing it on a mutual trust, and this, you know, making it the bigger part of discussion of the future. And of course, there's another issue. It's the problem of the issues specific to these digital technologies, and I think the more and more important problem is the problem of this. Now we are witnessing this paradigm shift from user-generated content to user-generated data. Internet of Things will make it this issue even more important, and I liked the word. It's from the hackers jargon from the early 70s, I think. It's automagically. Automagically, it's, you know, something, you know, that's working in a way it's too complicated to explain, so we shouldn't bother. But what makes me uncomfortable as the citizen is the more and more parts of the world works in automagical way, and no one's bothered to explain how and why. And I'm sure, you know, because there are, you know, we live in capitalism, so I know there are money involved, and I would like to know who has the power, who has the agency. And I'm not comfortable with this, you know, stuff being less and less transparent. So I think it's the next big frontier. And of course, the problem is we have the big problems with some very basic issues, as you know, my colleagues already said. And this part of this discussion about future, it's very hard because people think of problems of algorithms, for example, as a part of geek talk. You know, it's for the, you know, programmers, not for us. But the programmers' decisions shapes our reality, and it's reality I'm starting, you know, to be afraid of.
Thank you very much. I think this is very nice that you picked out this automatic state of mind. And I think this is worth a whole different discussion. So we will chat on this. Maybe also for you to look into the next year in terms of your research work. What are the main topics you're looking into at the moment?
Oh, it's research. You know, I'm very interested in this algorithmic impact on our lives, but it's something very, you know, it's very hard to research because it's not transparent. We have, you know, limited possibilities of analyzing data because we can't, you know, we don't have access to it. But for me, what is, you know, the question which is very very important for me. A few years ago, I was involved in a few projects which were based on the vision of new technologies as the element of empowerment of young people. You know, we all had, or maybe not we all had, I had this dream of young creators using new democratic technologies. But nowadays I'm aware that creativity is very, not even distributed, not evenly distributed social resource connected with the other aspects of life, and I'm a little bit ashamed of my previous works. I think they were a little bit naive in some parts, and nowadays I think less about this emancipatory perspective, which is still important, but I'm sure that whereas emancipation, with using new technologies, market will take care of people because there are money involved. But I'm more afraid of this control part. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid we need to come to the end of this panel discussion, but that definitely doesn't mean that the conversation has to stop here. Please make sure to continue it today, tomorrow. Bring the things you heard here back to your communities. I hope this was very helpful. Thank you very much to the panelists for your fruitful and valuable input and the comments you gave. And let's give them a round of applause, I would say. Thank you, everybody, and I wish you a good rest of the conference. Thank you very much.